I went to see the movie Strawberry Mansion, right? And it's this hipster movie, and the whole thing is basically, it's one of those movies where it's kind of, if you watch it on acid, it's probably cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's all these weird costumes, and the thing's very kind of doesn't make sense, and there's all these weird dimensions and stuff like that, right? And I even called it when I was watching. I go, I bet you that main guy that is the director. And I could tell it was almost, you could tell that
the director made himself the star too.
Yeah, and I could tell that
star, like literal star,
literal star, and I called that too from a mile away. I could tell that there was a pretentious air to it, and the guy was a pretty good actor. But the only thing that I realized about being a good actor is just do nothing. So he just made no facial movements, and the less you move, the better you are at acting. But the point I was going to make,
sorry to cut you off, but I do remember a Clint Eastwood acting tip when it said never blink.
Don't blink. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and it's like he honestly, if you watch his shit, he just like doesn't blink.
That's just how stupid acting is, right?
You got to get these little.
All the tips are just like, don't move, don't blink, don't do anything. Unless you're acting, you're playing some zany role. It really is just do nothing and you'll be okay at it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
But
except for Joaquin Phoenix and the Joker, he was like,
well, there is
stuff he did with
actors,
his weird stuff with his body.
Sure,
was like cool.
But it was basically a hipster film or whatever, right? So it's all people that kind of look like me or whatever at the theater, and the theater was a hipster theater that played it, right? And I've made this point
How many
before,
times did you get shushed?
But it blows my. Well, I walked out.
Really?
Yeah, I couldn't do it.
A walkout.
Yeah, I walked out, and I had to convince because I was sort of I gotta go, and she was like, "No, I don't.
I want to watch it."
No,
I walked out of I think 2 movies in my life.
No, I walk out.
One of them was Master of Disguise.
I was just not in the mood for this nonsense. It was ridiculous, right? But Master of Disguise.
I was like 13. I was like, this is arguably the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen.
Master of Disguise didn't look good.
I remember this was so insane.
Yeah, it didn't look good.
I was 20 minutes in. I go, nah, I got to pull the plug on this.
So New York's basically back to normal, except for this theater. It felt like the first day of COVID, honest to God. They're bugging you about the masks. Like, you have to show the vaccines and stuff like that. And then the people going to the movie are, so what's the scenario with the masks? And the guy goes, just take it off during sips if you feel uncomfortable. And it constantly blows my mind
Insane.
how the wild, drug addict punk people became the
Super
grandmothers.
safe.
Yeah, and it just always, blows my mind,
Well, I guess what happens is when you're the counterculture and then you find yourself as part of the main culture at some point, and then either you pivot back to being the counterculture and change.
Yeah, and then now
or you just get stuck.
And
stuck in the mud.
now even this, like the CDC and all these
That's
places
fucking insane.
saying wild things like, we don't want to release the new data because we don't want to make it look bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They basically said that it could be misinterpreted by anti-vaxxers, this new data that kind of, doesn't say.
Misinterpreted how?
Well,
I know how.
They mean used.
Yeah. I like how they say misinterpreted.
Interpreted, right?
Yeah.
So, but
was this like an indie theater?
Yeah.
That's why. Dude, honestly, on my way over here, so I normally go to that place, the coffee shop, like on Think Coffee or whatever. That's where I always go on my way to the studio. And because it's warm out, I didn't bring my jacket. I didn't have a mask. And they're like so strict on that shit.
Yeah.
That I was like walking over there, I forgot a mask. I'm like, I can't. And I'm like, we're over 2 years into this shit. I'm like, I can't go maskless to grab a coffee and leave.
No, and it really is what would consider to be the hip. But I'll tell you what happened is anyone that was actually the type of person that started that counterculture, essentially the leaders of that movement have all left and only the followers are left. So that's how you end up with sort of movements of followers, because there's all these sort of entrepreneurial people, so to speak, that start these, cultures and subcultures. And then, I can speak to myself, every person that I know who was, the important people in these kind of subcultures have all kind of abandoned them because they became ridiculous, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's
funny. A lot of these people are still kind of just pushing against, like, as crazy as it sounds, but just like the Trump stuff where they go, Trump people are no mask people. I'm not a Trump person.
But that's because
I'm a mask person.
But that is
their side.
Is that not a cardinal component of someone who doesn't think for themselves?
100%. It's fucking insane.
So you end up with all these people that had they joined a thing that was kind of like a rebellious thing, but it's wild to see over and over again. Even just, like I said, when you look around the subway and you go, who has their masks on? Joe Blow doesn't, but done to the nines.
Of course.
Image of like, I'm a wild boy.
For sure.
He's got fucking,
a wild mask boy. It is crazy, actually. I went into Trader Joe's and because they kind of just abandoned the mask thing without really making a big stink about
That's
it.
That's good for them. Yeah.
In New York, but in New York, like they didn't make a whole, I missed it because I had to go Google, like, is there still a mask man? And I remember I went into Trader Joe's like a week ago and I go
Getting
in
your
there,
lard.
Still 90% of people wearing masks.
Even though you don't have to.
Even though you don't have to.
Yeah.
And it's like nobody knows anybody who's like really got sick.
No, it's insane.
And everybody got the last one pretty much. And
fellas, thank you for watching that clip. Now, if you want to support this podcast, an easy way to do it is patreon.com/theboyscast. There's a new episode every week, only 5 bones, and we got tons of episodes there already. So support the dogs.
Support the dogs. I've been Bowen Yang.